welcome to Book Lust. I'm Nancy Pearl. My guest today at University Bookstore is author Jenny Spohr. Jenny, so nice to see you again.
Oh, thanks so much, Nancy. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I thought today we could talk about a couple of things. One is your books.
Thank you.
And the other is the route that you have chosen to go in publishing your books. So why don't you begin by telling us what your books are about?
Good, thank you. I would love to. So I'm writing a historical series that's based in the Renaissance in Europe. And it's about a king who doesn't want to be king and a queen who doesn't want to be queen, but they have to sort of save their country from the bloody chaos of the Reformation that's going on. So it follows them through 3 books, and it follows their story and their country's story as more pressure comes to bear on them. And I came up with the idea actually when I was struggling with insomnia after my first child. So my first child started to sleep through the night, which was lovely. And I couldn't sleep through the night anymore because I'd been so used to waking up.
Right.
And so I had this horrible insomnia, and it was before Kindles or these tablets that you could read in bed, and I read in bed all the time, but the light would keep my husband up. So, all these things, what am I gonna do for insomnia? So I started thinking of a story. I thought, if I think up my own story, it will help relax me, help focus my brain from all the to-do lists and things, right? So, okay, I'll think of a story. And the first thing I saw was a woman from the 1500s, late 1500s, in a gown, in a wedding gown, walking down the aisle of a stone church. And she was trembling. I mean, it was almost like a movie, like a camera up here, like looking down on this woman. And I thought, well, who is this woman? And why is she trembling? And why is she in a wedding gown, right?
Wow.
And I thought, okay, she's trembling because she's scared, and not just because she's nervous. She just is terrified.
Yeah.
Okay, well, why is she terrified? And then the camera, pans up to the altar, and there stands the king. I thought, she doesn't want to marry the king. And then as I thought about the king, I thought, well, he doesn't want to be here either. And that's where the story unfolded. And so I would go to bed every night and think of these scenes and think of these characters. And they came to life in my head, and soon it was making my insomnia worse because I wanted to know what happened to these characters.
Well, did you make notes in the middle of the night, or did you get up and
No,
write?
Because it was just sort of this story in my head for my own sort of pleasure and my own getting to sleep. And then I went on this little retreat, getaway, a staycation here in Seattle. I went to a B&B, and I said, I'm going to have this, meditative weekend, and I'm just going to calm, and, all these things. And I sat down Friday night, and I had all these deep, theology books and these, nonfiction books about scheduling your life and all that. I was going to really figure life out, right? And I sat down, and I thought, you need to write that story. I was like, okay, that'll be fun. It'll be a creative exercise. That'll be good. I've been in creativity things my whole life. I was in drama and musical theater and all these things. Okay, I'll do this little creative exercise. I started to write the story, and I looked up 5 hours later. It was dark outside, and I hadn't eaten.
Wow.
And that's when I realized, I need to write this. So, yeah, that's where it came from.
So did you grow up reading historical fiction? I mean, is there a writer that you would compare that influenced you, or that if we said to somebody, if you like this writer, then you would like Jenny's book?
For sure. I think if you like Philippa Gregory, for sure, very similar
That's what I was
vein. They're very I make no bones about it. It's popular fiction, popular historical fiction. It's not trying to be literary. Although I do say, it's candy, but it's Fran's chocolate. It's not Hershey's, right? So that's, I'm like, there's layers.
And we should say for the people who might not know what Fran's chocolate is, it's a Seattle chocolatier that sells. That supplies the Obama White House with salted caramels, I understand.
Yes, and they're amazing. So I talk about that. But Philippa Gregory would be one. But I did grow up. I was the kid, like so many of us, who was under the covers at night with a flashlight reading when my parents told me to turn off the lights. Right. So my whole life have been reading and reading and reading voraciously, and I've always had an interest in the Tudor era. So Henry VIII, his wives, and Elizabeth have been, I don't know what draws me to it other than just a fascination with royalty and with that time period. And so I've always enjoyed them. And
Well, I don't know if are you a mystery reader as well?
I do. I don't read as many mysteries, but I love Laurie King, for example. So I like the
right.
historical.
Well, because there's
or
a
Bernadette Pager, who's a
Yes,
local artist,
yeah, right, local
author.
writer,
yeah.
right.
I mean, that's my sort of go-to genre when I think, oh, I don't know what to read. I'll just read.
Right.
Well,
Well,
I read across genres, of
Yeah.
course, but it's
Well, my feeling, I agree. Philippa Gregory was in my mind because she sticks pretty much. I mean, she's in that period that that Reformation.
There's romantic elements,
There's
but there's also
right.
sort of this,
Right.
royal intrigue and
Yes.
backstabbing and all that stuff. Yeah.
But you're more humorous. Your
thank you.
books are more humorous.
you.
I mean,
That's-
I don't get the feeling
Just
that.
made my day, Nancy Pearl.
Well, I didn't ever get. I mean, I don't think Philippa Gregory is intending to be humorous, or at least that's my feeling.
Sure.
But one of the great charms, I think, of your books is the humor in them.
Thank you. Thank you
And
so much.
I have to say, your first one was called Heirs and Spares. I mean, that's a wonderfully evocative title.
Yeah.
Because we think about the royalty. We
Yes.
think about Diana and when she was married to Prince Charles, and they had William, and then
they had the
that was
spare.
their heir, and then they needed a spare, and that was Harry.
Right.
So are you a monarchist? do you believe that not we, but that the British should
I kind of say I kind of take them on.
Yes.
I don't.
I mean, I notice you're wearing a
I am
a
wearing
crown.
my crown. Where
Right.
I am intrigued by the royalty. I wouldn't, because I'm not part of their political system. I don't know if I would say that I'm strictly a monarchist. I think the royal family is interesting to watch. They certainly have a little bit more class than the royalty of America, or Hollywood stars, and or people who are famous for being famous, But really, what's interesting, and I think a lot of Americans forget, is that the royal family, especially in England, actually did have a lot of power in the world. And if Henry VIII had not established the Church of England, it's possibly we could be, a different country.
All Roman Catholics today.
Yeah, all of us could be Roman Catholic. That's just one example. Or Elizabeth, if she had lost to the Spanish, or if she had lost to the French. I mean, there are radical implications, and even the abdication during the Second World War. Okay, maybe we'd be speaking German if we had a different king. So there really are impacts politically and in everyday life. Now, nowadays, it certainly doesn't seem that way, but you never know that tides could turn and there could be more power there. But.
Well, so let's, at least for a moment, let's turn to, you finish the book. Then what happens?
Oh, well then, because I was a newbie writer. I'd been writing my whole life, but never seriously, but I wanted to take this one seriously. I had it professionally edited, all those things, professionally designed. And I started going to conferences, and I started pitching.
Okay, pitching to
agents and editors in New York.
Okay.
And that is a very painful process.
Yes.
And I finally started to get some agents who said, hey, I really like your voice, but this book isn't for me. Why don't you try so-and-so at this agency, right? And so I did that. For a while, and so I like to say I was getting some sniffs from New York, which was great, and and felt good. But then, lo and behold, in December of that year that I was pitching, Kate Middleton, who will be a Queen of England someday, got pregnant. And here I have a book named Heirs and Spares, and it's about a royal couple trying to have a baby. So when do you publish a book about royal people having a baby? And my entire family is in marketing, other than myself and my husband. Everybody's in marketing. And so I couldn't pass up this marketing opportunity. And so I'd done enough research about especially debut and new authors and mid-list authors, with big publishing houses, and done a lot of research on independent publishing. And I decided that I should independently publish, not only because it's a genre, it's a genre historical fiction with romantic elements, it will be easier to sell independently, as well as the marketing opportunity was fabulous. And it really did help. When the book came out, I did a lot of different, radio and TV and magazine articles and things about this obsession with royalty and why is that there. And so it really did actually help marketing wise. So that's why I decided to go that route eventually.
That was something that you had to set up by yourself.
Yes, I do have a freelance publicist, and she helps me with some of those things, but most of it really is me putting myself out there and hoping somebody will find it interesting, the classic pitch. And frankly, I have a lot of friends who are traditionally published who have to do the same thing.
Right.
I mean, they have maybe a month of marketing money, and once that dries up, like unless that book has become the next Twilight or the next, Secret Life of Bees, or you're done and you got to do it all yourself, author. So I felt like, geez, if I'm going to have to do all this marketing and all this publicity myself anyway, okay, well, I'll do it and make, hopefully make a little bit more money percentage-wise.
Right. Now, how difficult was it then when you are, a writer, and now you decided early on that this would be part of a series?
Yes.
You knew it would be a trilogy.
Yeah, because it was too long.
Right.
It was,
Right. So all this marketing that you're doing, knocking on doors, I mean, that's the equivalent of it, it takes away from the writing time.
Yeah.
And you're a mom, and you have, youngish children. So, how did that balance work for you? Or did it get out of kilter in your mind? Or?
It does get out of kilter. I mean, and some of it too, it's the classic, like, okay, my daughter's in elementary school, my son is in preschool part-time, but, and that's my writing time when they're in school. And then, okay, well, so someone needs to go to the dentist, or someone got sick, or, things just interfere with that writing time. But my publicist gave me a great number. She said, your marketing should be 30%. And your writing should be 70%. And so I try to keep within that. Now, when a book launches, so my second book, God and King, just launched right before Thanksgiving. So I'm putting more like 60% into marketing right now.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm trying to finish up another book. So it's it is hard to balance. But
I mean, we have some things to show the viewers, some of your marketing, and the one that when I first met you, one of the things that I just loved was this little magazine that you put together, marketing your book, and but marketing so it looks like a People magazine from the middle of the 16th century, with a big question mark on the cover. Who will King William marry? Couldst be thou? And heirs and spares expose, drunken dread Duke of Norfolk. I mean, just very, very clever. So where did this come from? Where did this idea, where did this idea come from?
So I saw Diana get married at a very impressionable age. Okay, right, and it was, beautiful. And anytime Diana was on the cover of People magazine, it always came home, right? And so when I started thinking about that, and like you said, and thank you for mentioning that there's some humor in the book, I wanted to have something a little tongue-in-cheek, to go along with it. So I said, well, why not a People magazine, or an Us Weekly from the 16th century? And so a friend of mine who's a graphics designer and I put this together and just wrote, a couple articles that are, funny little things. There's an ad for, one of my favorites is the ad for the drug Leachator, which is leeches, of course, right? There's this whole disclaimer of what you shouldn't take. So it was really fun to put together, and I use it, the actual magazine, the paper magazine for publicity things and for press and things like that. But if you sign up for my newsletter online, then you get access to it online, so you can look at the PDF or whatever you want online too. So it's been a fun.
So how would people? What's the URL for your?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, it is www.jlspohr.com.
And it's Spohr.
Spohr. Yes.
Okay. So you have this, which is a big piece, which I presume was, even though it was your friend who did it. I mean, the production. This is
took a long time.
Pretty high production values.
It cost me a lot of very expensive beer.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
which is going to translate to a bottom line anyway.
Yes, exactly.
But then you did postcards.
Yep.
And these were, you could just like hand these out at your daughter's
Yeah.
school and that kind of
And
thing.
when I go to different conferences or whatnot, I'll always bring those or other events. If I'm at something with an audience, I'll bring enough to
Right.
pass those out if I can and things
Right.
like that. And they're just good to kind of have. I carry some in my purse all the time, and if it comes up, well, here you go. Check out the book. So
Now, on one of these postcards, for the first one for Heirs and
Yeah.
Spares, you have a quote from
do.
another a writer, a
Yes.
blurb, as we say in the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Who says, with a fresh voice, an intelligent and witty protagonist, and vivid historical details, Heirs and Spares captured me from the start and never let me go. Now, was this somebody? How did this person, Maureen McQuarrie, get this book?
Maureen McQuarrie is actually my mentor. And she became my mentor before I started writing, which is amazing. She writes lovely young adult fiction, almost sort of middle grade fiction, just gorgeous. So she was one of my beta readers because I said, I don't know what I'm
Right.
doing, Maureen. Like, you do this for a living. You've got,
Right.
and she read one of the ugly first drafts and was really encouraging and read continuous drafts. And she suggested, if you'd like a blurb,
Wow. Right.
So that was lovely. So it really was kind of working authors that I know, to try to get some.
Are there regrets that you have that you went the self-publishing route, however we're going to pronounce that today?
That's a good question. I think the one regret is that sort of sense of legitimacy, that there isn't as much legitimacy in independent publishing. Although it's getting better.
I was going to say,
it used to be very, almost like the dating ads in the back of a newspaper, right? If you had to get a date that way, like
Right.
that was pretty sad, and it was vanity publishing,
which meant that you actually paid a publisher to publish your book.
Nobody would read that sort of stuff. But now that's really changed, and I think that there still is that lack of, you're not a, because you're not with
You're
New
not
York,
a
you're not
real
legit.
author,
Yeah, you're
right.
not a real author.
Right.
But at the same time, all I have to do is read my reviews and the people who've loved it, even the people who haven't loved it. That's my book is out there. I wrote this story because it spoke to me and because I loved it, and I thought there might be other people that liked it too. And there are, and they're there, and that's what brings me joy, and that's what keeps me writing. So there is a little bit of that, and also there's the potential of larger exposure with going with New York as well. But then there's also the flip side of that. There's not. If your book doesn't hit,
Right.
then most of my author friends who are past that 1 or 3 month thing are in the same position that I am. Trying to knock on doors, like you said.
Right.
So yeah, and I actually am pitching right now a modern Women's Day fiction to New York, just to because it's a different voice. It's more of a modern women's fiction. I think it would be harder to sell independently because it's not specifically in a genre.
Right.
So I'll see how that goes. I've got a couple agents that are looking at it right now, and so we'll see. It'd be nice to kind of have that hybrid and
Right.
see
Which one works
which one
best
works
for
better,
you.
how the sales are, how the readers come.
Right.
Yeah.
And the name of the publishing company, it's Plum Street?
Yeah, Plum Street Press.
Plum Street Press.
Uh-huh.
And that was what you came up with?
Yes, it is named after the Snowball place on Plum Street in New Orleans, in Uptown in New Orleans, because we love that Snowball place.
And
so
plum.
and I just
Right.
I like saying that word plum. I like the way it feels in the mouth, and yeah.
When you were working on Heirs and Spares,
Yes.
you wrote what you saw as chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3. I mean, you wrote it sequentially. You had a plot arc, or did you?
Sort of. I knew the major scenes. So I like to think about it like making a necklace, like a beaded necklace. I had these big, beautiful beads that I knew were going to be there, and I had to put them in. And so I've actually, I would write, sometimes I'd say, well, I just really want to write this scene. So I'd write in the middle of the necklace, basically.
Right.
And then I'd get these can I go with this bead? Looks pretty. Oh, this would look nice. And sort of those scenes, I didn't really know what's happening. But the major stones, I know. And in fact, the third book, the last third of the third book is already written. So I know where it ends. So I know where it begins. I know where it ends. what happens in the middle. There's a couple wars, there's marriages, there's
Heirs and
babies, there's
spares,
heirs
right.
and spares, right?
Right.
There's tumultuous things, but I know the end.
Did you know the end when you were
Yes.
in this insomniac
Yes.
state?
Yeah, well, I got there, right? It's
Yeah.
like, well, then how does it end? And yeah, I would skip around. Like, I'd try to go to sleep and I'd be like, oh, I want to think about this one scene when this happens. I'm like, oh, okay. And then...
And did you ever, I mean, I find when I'm doing that kind of thing, thinking, you know, something like I have to write an introduction or
Yeah.
something like that, or fiction, whatever, and, you know, a great line will come to me in the middle of the night, and I will be too lazy to get up. Now, has that, are there lines that you regret?
Yeah.
I mean, that you've lost?
Oh, absolutely. The worst was when I was breastfeeding in the middle of the night, because you've got a baby and
Right.
it's 2 a.m. and you're
Right.
in the dark, and I would have to stop myself. I'd stop thinking you're going to
Yeah.
lose, you know, and I would, yeah. I've lost some great dialogue sequences, but you got to figure it all comes out in the wash somehow. But yeah, I'd be like, that's the perfect retort. And I, you know, completely lost because it was 3 a.m.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember those days well.
Yeah.
In your book that is out looking for an agent, how do you deal with sort of the inevitable rejections, or we could broaden it and say, you know, the people who don't like, I mean, the people who are going to comment on a book
Yes.
on some social media
Yes.
platform are either the people who really like it,
Yes.
but I think, you know, less often than the people who really dislike
yes.
it. So how do you you have a support group of writers that you...
I have bourbon, and I curl up in a little ball and rock when I. No, I do.
France chocolates.
Yes, France chocolates. It's always painful because it feels like books feel like your babies, and it's like my daughter being teased on the playground. Like, I don't want to hear that, you know. But my skin is a little thicker now, especially after going through the aging process the first time.
Right.
Of having the initial rejections before it was edited. I mean, I can't even believe the first manuscript I sent out. I mean, just nothing. You'd hear nothing, which is almost worse than the no.
Right.
And then you'd start getting the no's. But yeah, those, especially Goodreads. People on Goodreads can be very, very harsh. My favorite are the ones who get the book for free some way and don't read the genre and then panic. I don't normally read this genre, but and I hated it and it was free. You know, you're like, well, geez, your righteous indignation.
Right. So for self-published writers, do you do on your website, coming out of your website, contests and giveaways and things like that?
Yeah, we've got a giveaway right now going on for the launch of God and King with a book blogger. You know, I try to partner with as many book bloggers that would like to partner with, and I do contests. I give away little things and free advanced reading, little crowns and little. You know, mulling spices because it's sort of that era, things like that. And then
I might enter one of
you
those
should.
mulling spices.
And the advanced review copies and things like that of things. So I do that, and I try to I keep my my list of subscribers updated with stuff. Almost once a week. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but I also blog, which is another way of keeping connected with your readers. So I try to continually blog about some things that are sort of frivolous and funny, and some things that are more important, to me in the world. And
so tell me, because I'm sure you have the inside track, and I thought I read this, but are Kate and William having twins this time?
Oh well, it's always that's always the question. Nobody knows.
I thought it had been definitively announced.
Oh well, I should check.
Maybe
I should
not.
look.
Maybe not.
Well, it's funny. Kate and I actually had very similar morning sickness. I was not in the hospital, but my morning sickness was very severe for my first child, and everyone said, "Oh, you're having twins," because we know morning sickness is badly. It means you have twins, and sure enough, it was not. It's just a girl.
Well, so gosh, I have to say,
yes,
Jenny,
I'll have to check. I'll have to check my Twitter feed.
You might have to call me and say, email me and say yay or nay about about that. I'm eagerly awaiting.
Yeah,
awaiting
that would
news.
be extra spares. That'd be good
Yeah,
for them to have.
right.
You know, when it used to be back in the day, the perfect was to have 2 boys and then a girl, because the girl you would marry off to the prince of another country, right? So
right.
you're making those alliances. So you're securing your throne with the boys, but then you're securing alliances with the girl.
Yeah, and you know, which in its own way we could get into a whole discussion of feminist anti-feminist politics by, you know, the way girls were. Daughters of royalty were chattels, in many ways. Do you read a lot of nonfiction, historical, you know, histories as background for this?
Oh yeah, one of my favorite authors is Alison Weir, and she does nonfiction as well as fiction. And wow, I mean, she's fabulous. I remember reading her Lady in the Tower, which is one of her most recent nonfiction. It's about the last 2 months of Anne Boleyn's life. Yeah. And I remember reading that book and getting to the point where I thought, oh, maybe she's not going to die. I mean, I was so caught up in her narrative style of nonfiction. You're like, well, of course she's going to die. But you know, you think, oh, you know, she's
maybe there's
good.
a chance. Maybe I've remembered history
maybe I
wrong.
The boat doesn't sink. She doesn't lose her head. So I love her, and I do quite a bit of research. Although I have a minor in history and studied the Reformation in particular in graduate school, and so I know this period of history just really well. It's just kind of in my blood.
Right.
So, for example, if I were to write a book about the 1920s in America, I would probably have to do significantly more research than I did for this book, just because I don't know it. But I know, you know, Henry and his wives and Elizabeth and all that so well. It's so sort of ingrained in me. It's easier for me to write that. In fact, the main character of my book in the series, the female protagonist, the Queen, is based on Henry's wives. So she's an amalgamation of his 6 wives.
Yes.
So
that's great. Well, Jenny, it's just been an absolute delight to talk to you, and I'm so grateful to you for sharing your experiences, because I do think, as you said, things are changing, and we're going to see in the book business a lot more independent publishing, and it's nice to meet a very successful independent publisher. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nancy. It was a pleasure to be here.